I think we are sleepwalking into disaster. We need to get back to the idea that I might find what you've done incredibly offensive, but I defend absolutely your right to say. I mean, I think we will see in our lifetimes a Christian revival. I think we should have core values of ourselves and be proud of them. Dare one even say be proud of being British, proud of being Christian.
Welcome to another episode of Off the Record. Today we're talking about the blasphemy laws, the return of blasphemy laws in the United Kingdom. After decades and decades of progress, led by mostly the so-called liberals and progressives, we seem to be going backwards, ladies and gentlemen, and we seem to be going back led by the same liberals and progressives. In this episode, we have a special guest, a legal expert, to come and explain all this to us. Stephen Barrett is back. Welcome to the show, Stephen. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
So, are you excited for the return of blasphemy laws?
No, it's such a bad idea. It really just...
Yeah, I mean, let's start with what's going on. So we started hearing some new MPs, independent MPs, obviously Islamic side, who came out recently since the general election to mention that we need some sort of blasphemy laws to protect Islam, specifically Islam. And then obviously most of the mainstream parties ignored it. We thought they were ignoring it, but the Labour Party has come back. Angela Rayner is going to be setting up essentially a council to monitor your speech, specifically to protect Islam. And if you, for example, insult the book or whatever, or mock the prophet or whatever you want to do, criticize it, and it seems they seem to be doing it in such a casual way, like it's not an outrageous policy idea. What are your thoughts on what's going on with this?
Well, I mean, that's something to watch and something to be aware of. I think we are sleepwalking into disaster, and you can call that our fault. I mean, we are, all of us involved in this country, and if we sleepwalk into disaster, we are sort of all responsible for that. Obviously, this is a bad idea. Obviously, Angela Rayner should not be allowed to do it. Therefore, we have to somehow get that message across. We have to wake up. We have to stop being a sleepwalker. We have to stop being asleep. And we have to wake up and say, this is a very bad idea.
Yeah, but why is it that, I mean, there's definitely double standards. Nobody's actually advocating for people to just go around randomly, I don't know, to burn the Bible. But if you do, for example, burn the Bible, people would say it's offensive, it's rude, but it's a book. And yeah, people could be offended, but it shouldn't be illegal in that sense, right? I mean, if you go around targeting random civilians who happen to be Christian or Islamic or Jew, that's different, right? There should be a difference between mocking or criticizing ideas as opposed to people, right?
No, I think we should be even more tolerant of mocking generally. And anything that is mocking or rude or offensive should be tolerated. I increasingly am of the view that we need Voltaire back, which Maya is particularly painful for me because, of course, he was a Frenchman. But we do need to get back to the ideas of the Enlightenment. We need to get back to the idea that I might find what you've done incredibly offensive, but I defend absolutely your right to say or do whatever you've done because those are the ideals of the Enlightenment. With Islam in particular, it really breaks my heart because Christianity fell into absolute madness in the Dark Ages and became very oppressive, and we burnt loads of our books and we basically became regressive barbarians. And it was Islam that helped us get out of it. It was the Emir of Cadiz, which is in Spain, who some monks, I think from Bologna, from the University of Bologna, went to him and said, may we borrow your copy of Aristotle? And he very kindly said yes. And they took it back to Bologna and they started copying Aristotle. Everything's done by hand, so it's slow. But eventually from Bologna, Aristotelian thought and the ideas of Aristotle spread, and that became what we call the Italian Renaissance. And then from the Italian Renaissance, that became what we call the Enlightenment as Aristotle spread across Western Europe. All of this germinated because of the kindness of the Emir of Cadiz, a Muslim, and a Sunni Muslim. The idea that Islam is somehow not connected or not welcome in the Enlightenment offends me deeply. I mean, many of them have voluntarily left it, and that's a different question. But we should stay with the ideas of the Enlightenment. We must protect the ideas and the thoughts of Voltaire, and we must be tolerant of our different ideas. We must agree to disagree. We must, once again, champion intellectual thought.
Yes, I mean, cultures, especially cultures of tribes, are mostly led by the people at the top. And that doesn't necessarily mean governments, but that also includes, intellectuals and those who lead the cultural institutions. So throughout history, the Christian cultures went up and down. The Islamic culture also went up and down. Throughout centuries, we've had, for example, I mean, even right now, UAE and Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, they're not doing extremism. They try to obviously have their own culture, but whatever is happening. But the Islamic culture, in terms of the elites in the Islamic world, throughout centuries, we've had the Dark Ages, we've had some more education and intellectuality, and then we've gone backwards essentially in places like Syria and Iraq. Do you think that some people would say Christianity, obviously, especially after Enlightenment, and even originally, because the Christian message was just about forgiveness and being nice, and it wasn't really advocated to go around and oppress people. Some governments did it in the name of Christianity, but some say because of the Christian West is like very soft and liberal, it's now obviously the dark side of the Islamic side who see that vacuum, and they are the ones bringing back blasphemy laws. Because I think maybe subconsciously they see the Christian messaging weak and feeble. I'm not advocating for Christianity to bring back blasphemy laws, but do you see a vacuum in the West?
Yes, we clearly have a religious vacuum, and that's, I think, unarguable, because we seem to have lost our way, and we don't seem to celebrate or even enjoy religion. It seems that religion itself is something to mock or denigrate. The irony that we're bringing back blasphemy laws when actually we really don't respect religion at all. It's a sort of patronizing left-wing thinking where they do this to me, Maya, because of my sexuality. I'm in the alphabet soup. And we get patted on the head and told, you're terribly disgraceful, but we tolerate you. And that's the message. It's not you're okay. It's not you're respectable, which, by the way, I think I am respectable. It's always you're awful, but we tolerate you. And I think really that's the left's message to Islam, or a version of Islam in this country. It's you're awful, but we tolerate you. And I'm not sure that is particularly healthy. I don't think it's...
That's the thing, sorry. So we're making it about politics. Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner, the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. Surely, I mean, to some people, it would come across as, so are you pro-Islamism, for example? But surely, I mean, considering, Starmer's wife is allegedly Jewish, allegedly. And also, they seem to be Western liberals, people like Angela Rayner and Starmer. What is the assessment of what's going on in their brain that surely they're not doing it because they love Islam, right? Is it fear, or is it what's going on with it?
They don't believe in Allah, do they? So when they go to a mosque and when they do all this performative stuff, they don't actually believe. So it is sort of soulless, sort of empty in an odd way. It is that patronizing pat on the head. You're awful, but we tolerate you. And it's just a bad place to be in. I would respect them so much more if they had their own faith and then they embraced the possibility of others, which is rather nice. So when David Amos was murdered, I arranged locally a multi-faith gathering, and that was really rather moving. And some of our local imams came to the Christian church. I wanted to have a Christian church because David Amos Christian, but some of our imams were more than happy to do that on a tolerant basis. And I am a Christian, and I am more than happy to talk to an imam who has a genuine faith and a genuine belief than really, the likes of Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner, who would always, if they came to a church, they'd be faking it. They didn't believe anything. And I had a Catholic priest there, and we had all sorts of different people of faith, but they aren't. They don't believe any of this. They're rather mocking, rather rude about faith.
That's interesting. Yeah, because the lack of faith is quite interesting, because even in terms of the cultural side of it for politicians, because I can have a conversation with some reasonable Islamic imams or whatever, who I would still disagree with everything they say, because, for example, I could have an intellectual debate, well, theological debate about how they are wrong when they say Allah, or how they're wrong when they mention Jesus in the Quran, but you didn't mention Jesus the right way, the way you think you mentioned him, and I could debunk their ideas, and they could challenge us, fine. And I'm not talking about those who actually, for example, publicly and openly believe in stoning women or gay people or doing terrorism. I'm just talking about those who just believe in the Allah's message and all that. We could have a theological debate, but at least we could have a debate with them. But the problem is those who are vacant, people like Angela Rayner, come across as, well, she doesn't actually believe in Yahweh or Allah or anything like that. She doesn't actually necessarily believe in the concept of the journey of basically Abrahamic religions, whether you like it or not. So I think people like Angela Rayner become more problematic, the liberal vacant side, than even those who we can have theological disagreements between the Team Yahweh and Team Allah, but these people are going to take us back into the Dark Ages. People like Angela Rayner, they're this so-called liberal left who are so enlightened that they don't need Yahweh or Allah, right?
Yeah, and it's the fact that they don't understand the principles of the Enlightenment, and they are effectively patronizing all of us, because we know absolutely they have no faith. They don't believe any of this stuff. They don't really believe in having blasphemy laws. They just believe they won't get prosecuted if we have blasphemy laws. That's, at the core of it. It's not that they believe blasphemy laws will be necessary. It's that they believe they can use blasphemy laws against people they don't like. And that's really
the key point.
And I'm slightly fed up of living in a country where people say one thing and mean the absolute opposite. I don't think it's terribly helpful. I think it's again patronizing, returning to this concept that they're just a bit patronizing. But it's childish, it's infantile, it's not going to help us get anywhere good. And at the moment, Maya, we are somewhere bad. I mean, the economy is tanking. All of our systems are basically gummed up. We have a massive and bloated bureaucracy that we can't afford. We're hugely and chronically in debt. We spend more in debt repayments than we do in defense. Our defense looks as though it's in a terribly weak state. I mean, I hate the idea of going to war right now. The basics aren't working of the state. And instead we have these patronizing non-believers just sort of patting us all on the head and doing symbolic things.
But that's again goes back to when society becomes problematic. Well, when everything's relatively peaceful and democratic and stable, then more enlightenment happens, and obviously it's in the name of secularism, more liberalism happens, and that was towards the end of the 20th century. But then when things start going bad and divided, then faith comes and ideologies come. Seems like because, again, going back to the vacuum thing, the Christian messages, again, whether you believe in the actual religious part or not, the cultural part, the message is not being promoted. So obviously, if the demographic is changing, you got more people who are Islamic, they're going to be promoting that in terms of the communities within society. And we have had people converting, the white Anglo-Saxons converting to Islam, because, there's not much messaging coming from church. And so this is why, as you said, so we have local MPs, specifically Labour MPs, for example, sometimes Lib Dems, who then seem like they're trying to pander because, well, first they need the votes. And we even had Nigel Farage, leader of Reform, because he understands that, well, I can't insult everybody who's Islamic, so we need to embrace it, because he needs the votes as well. Reform UK needs the votes. And then you were like, well, so how do we counter this? because if you listen to even someone like Nigel, it comes across as you have two options. Either go full on Spain and Portugal, like a few centuries ago, like dark battle and kick people out, or ban Islam, or the option is to just embrace it and surrender and just basically say, well, Christian messaging is gone. No more church. It is what it is. Surely there should be a third option. I mean, some people were optimistic, like David Cameron type, saying, yeah, we'll just keep pushing for integration. But if you're not pushing our ideas, the Western ideas, then you can't just tell someone who was born in Birmingham, for example, and into an Islamic neighborhood, everybody's Islamic. You can't just tell them, leave Islam. You have to have something to offer to them, right? I mean, if the alternative is Angela Rayner culture, I don't think they're going to leave Islam, right?
No, they aren't. And that's, again, the problem. They're not offering something. I mean, I think we will see in our lifetimes a Christian revival, almost, I think, despite the leadership of the church. I think almost despite the bishops and the archbishops, we will see a Christian revival. And I think amongst people younger than me, I'm seeing that much more obviously. 10 years ago, it was easy for me to be openly a bisexual and incredibly difficult for me to be openly a Christian. And it is now much easier for me to be openly Christian. And I think a lot more people are going to church than used to go to church. And I think we will get, and it's one of Christianity's real strengths, is that it's always been a bottom-up religion. It's always been a popular movement. It's, you know, in the very beginning, they would meet in secret in rooms in houses in Rome, and those would be churches. You know, that it's never really required the state in quite the way that other religions occasionally have or rely upon them. I mean, it's been an imperial religion, so it has benefited from the strength of the state. I'm not denying that, but in its bones, it comes from the people. So I think it will probably come back, and I think it will be good if it does come back. That said, I don't have a problem with Islam. It's not inherently, there's nothing obviously wrong with it. Let's celebrate the good things about it.
I could say it's incorrect. it's inaccurate. But I mean, I think we have to clarify, because I think some people would think you're talking about behavior, Islamic behavior and culture. You're talking about the actual, like, the original message and all this, right? I mean, there's still some bad things in the book, but you're just saying, if you're just saying, yeah, here's God, just one God, worship one God, that's fine, right? That's what you mean, right?
Well, there are lovely things that they've achieved, and there's no need for in here. I don't see a need for conflict, and I do think we can coexist. I think it's far harder to coexist with people like Angela Rayner, who believe nothing. I see them as much more of a problem. Again, I think you can have mutual respect between believers. So I have lots of Jewish friends who are religious, and I find it very easy to get on with them. Obviously, I don't agree with them. Obviously, I'm not Jewish, but at least they have ideas. It's like I'd rather go down the pub with Claire Fox because it's
communist.
Fun to talk to her well, she is basically a communist, but she's politically engaged. Therefore, she's paying attention to politics, so she's more fun to talk to than I don't have mates who aren't politically interested. They are less. They are more of a problem. They would be more boring to me.
But for the record, obviously those who are watching this, if it comes across as like Stephen is now basically promoting Islam, I mean he's a Christian himself, but I do need to push back at one thing, because when you said, well, just like, Jews, and I've got Jewish friends, and I don't agree with them, but they can have their own faith. There's a tiny difference that there's still a lot of people from the Islamic side who want to push you to convert. Jews don't want you to convert, and Jews don't want society to become, well, in England, for example, a Judeo kind of society, whereas the Islamic, it's hardwired, the mentality of Islam, because it's about expansion and spreading the ideology that they have and their faith that they have. Is that it's not always by force, it's not always conflict, but it's in terms of the promotion of it. They do want to spread it, and you might say, well, fine, spread it. It's still some sort of faith, but the values will be different to Christian values in terms of the behavior. And again, we're not necessarily talking about stoning women. It's everything. Even in terms of, if you have hypothetically Sharia-style finance laws, that will be very different. Whether you like it or not, society will be different. You won't have pubs. You won't have bacon. I mean, to be objective, it could be better, it could be worse. I'm not saying I have my views. It will be worse. I can't live without bacon and pubs, but it will be a different society. Jews don't want the whole of England to just basically stop being the way it is. I mean, there's also big similarities because of the Old Testament and New Testament compared to the Quran, but isn't that the main difference? And you can make an argument. Well, have your own faith. I don't care. Everyone has their own views. But you have to keep an eye on certain ideologies. Like if you have Mormons going around turning everybody into Mormons, I'll have a problem with that as well. It's not really just about Islam.
We do, Maya. So in the town I'm talking to you from, we have a Mormon church. And they go around trying to convert people to be Mormons. The other obvious one is and it doesn't work terribly well.
Doesn't work. Exactly.
They're more than welcome to do it. And the other one is the Jehovah's Witnesses, who are tasked with always going around and trying to persuade people. Actually, what's been interesting in my lifetime is how moderate they've become. So they used to knock on everyone's doors and try to come into your home and actively convert you to be a Jehovah's Witness. And they've relaxed those rules. Now the requirement is simply is allegedly met if they just stand near a tube station entrance with some magazines and point at them. So they don't even have to engage in conversation. Our Jehovah's Witnesses have become much more moderate. And these are the issues that we're talking about. We're talking about fanaticism and moderation. And as long as Islam is always moderate, we won't ever have a problem with it. And we mustn't assume it is extreme. And we mustn't assume or allow it to be extreme here. There's no reason why it can't be moderate. And one of the great
it's about the type of people you're bringing in from the Islamic world. If the big early days of Edgware Road was fine when you had the educated rich Arabs from Jordan, from Saudi Arabia. That no one had a problem with the Edgware Road back then. It's about the caliber of people. People from UAE and Bahrain have been warning us that, saying, well, you are taking our wrong type of people. So obviously they're going to bring the wrong mentality of the Islamic world, right?
Well, that's the sea to navigate, okay? And it's for us as a nation to navigate that sea and to make sure we get to a safe place. There are parts of the Islamic world which I have great faith in. So I'm a great believer in the Abraham Accords. I hate obviously everything that happened since the 7th of October. The 7th of October was absolutely grotesque, and Israel has every right to defend itself. Once that's over, and Israel has defended itself, and I believe Israel will succeed, I believe we will also then see peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia and UAE, and we will start to see a really prosperous part of the globe where we will get lots of exciting economic activity, which will lead to lots more prosperity and be a very good thing. So I see that as a good destination. I mentor a lot of young people, and obviously that means I've mentored a lot of Islamic young people because we have a lot of Islamic young people too. So I'm very open about that. It's not that I go out and pick any of my young people on any basis. I don't. They just come to me and they are what they are. I have an awful lot of faith in Islamic young women who are going to university now. And I think they will be a deeply moderating force within Islam in our country. I think there will be an absolute force for good. And I think those women have an awful lot to contribute. I always like to raise, because I live somewhere with quite a substantial Pakistani population. And at the moment, people get very jumpy about Pakistani populations. And I would just always like to highlight the women are incredibly impressive. I mean, often they do have language problems, but these are women who can be told almost as a moment's notice, oh, by the way, in 3 days' time, you've got to cater for 400 people. I mean, the British Army can't do that. I mean, that's just incredible. And the logistical power of these women is absolutely off the chart. And they're very humble.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So I've heard this before as well. So the women, from the Islamic culture in the West, they are the hope, because education always debunks extremism in general. Education brings civility, prosperity, generally speaking, obviously, in terms of the wider, not education in terms of going to university studying lesbian dance theory, but actual being informed, and obviously in terms of opportunities, and obviously women who have been, a lot of them, even in neighborhoods who've been isolated, and we're not even in East London partly. I've been told you still have to cover your hair, for example, in London, even though you're not in Pakistan, for example. If you empower them, then they could actually eventually fight for the liberation of the future generations, their kids, and their future kids and everything else. But that is being hopeful. But that's one option. But we still have to sort out the borders and the mass migration. We need to stop it for now because we've got too many people. You need to sort out what's going on inside the country first, and then if you want to recreate some sort of immigration system, right?
Yes, I mean, I'm all for shutting down immigration right now. I think we should probably have net zero on immigration because we clearly cannot build houses fast enough. We cannot grow the population at this rate. It's not even important to focus on who's coming. It's just a numbers issue. It's just simply overwhelming the nation, and it has to stop. We have to get a grip on things. Then I think we should believe in something. I think we should not be like the Bollard. I think we should not be like Angela Rayner. I think we should have core values of ourselves and be proud of them. Dare one even say be proud of being British, proud of being Christian, and we should come and we should be very nice. The people who are not we can be very nice to them and very welcoming, and they can stay as absolutely as they are. We shouldn't try and force anybody to become anything. But if we're just a bit more proud, I mean, one of the problems of my life has been the amount of people who seem desperately ashamed to be British. And that's very different. They're not being aggressively proud, which would also be a problem. They're aggressively ashamed, which I think is also a problem. We just need to be quietly proud. What's wrong with being quietly proud of who we are? You know?
Pride is important, obviously, being proud of achievements and everything else in the past and ongoing things. And we are proud of your success on Substack. So what is what a segue. So tell everybody what's going on Substack. You have a Substack and it's been going well. Obviously, I'm going to put the link in the description. What's happening with it?
So I've got my Substack called Public Gallery, and it's growing. I do call us the Lovelies. I think we are a nice corner of the internet. I don't think we'll ever get as big as you, but that's fine. We don't need to be. We are a place for thinking and thoughts. There is no such thing as a stupid question on my Substack, and I answer questions every Friday. I've got a system for doing it. I'm also encouraging and I hope empowering people to take the fight back to democracy, because I don't want to be run by people like the Bollard and Angela Rayner forever. And the answer to that is not, it really arises because I get asked, is there anything the law can do? And it's like, well, no, the law can't help it. The law can't run your life for you, but you can run your life for you. And so that's a recurring theme that we have. And then I just answer any legal questions, explain things, hopefully entertain. I've got a hopefully happy show with Andrew Eborn where people just generally laugh. So I think it's called A Pair of Briefs. So we're not taking life too seriously. But that's the Substack, and I'm very proud of it. I hope people come and subscribe.
Yes, definitely do. The link is in the description. Thank you again, Stephen, for joining. This was the second episode of our new Off the Record podcast. You could also listen to it if you have YouTube Music, whatever it's called, and other platforms as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'm PM UTC, and we are the media.